of our housekeeping, I just would like to introduce Sterling Mason, who will be presenting this session and talking about measuring success. Sterling leads, I'm not realizing we don't have an intro slide for Sterling. But Sterling leads our client team. Sterling, now Chatbot design team. I'm forgetting your title, but Sterling has been at Mobile Coach for 7 years and has an incredible amount of Chatbot knowledge. So I'll turn it over to him.
Thanks, Corey. I appreciate it. Wearing a lot of hats at Mobile Coach, so literally and figuratively. So thanks for that intro. Yeah, been at Mobile Coach for a number of years and excited to talk through success of chatbots today. So just like I have for all my sessions, quick little trip down memory lane. We've been doing a tour of Mobile Coach t-shirts from the beginning of time till now. So today is sort of the modern t-shirt design. Very cool, very cool. So it's been an exciting little trip down memory lane with these sessions. So yeah, let's dive in and talk about how to measure the success of a chatbot project. So right up front, we're gonna cruise through a lot of different discussion points today, talk about some ROI and look at a lot of metrics in the platform. So we'll roll up our sleeves and dive into that. Like Corey mentioned, please feel free to put questions in chat at any point, and we'd love to dig into any questions you have along the way. So with that, let's dive in. So there's a common question that comes about as we're talking with folks about chatbots, and that's, what evidence do we have for ROI for a chatbot project? And a lot of folks rightly ask this question, right? ROI is very important to a lot of organizations, probably all organizations. And I think it's an important question. Kind of think through, we have these business problems and we're looking for solutions. A chatbot sounds like it could answer some of those problems, but what evidence or what process can we go through to make sure that that's the case? So we've seen a number of patterns over time and some principles come out of that. And so we're going to talk through those for the first portion of the presentation today. So first, let's jump ahead to these couple questions that we like to set the stage with. So we can kind of think of like ROI as the return, or like what you get out of spending on training. And when you what is it that your goal is? What do you want out of that? So an important couple of questions to ask: what is the goal for the chatbot? This is something we want to drill down to and be as clear-minded about as we can. And it's also important that we get key stakeholders to agree on this goal. We might have some clarity within, say within a chatbot design team, or the folks overseeing a program might all agree on what their goal is. But if there are other stakeholders who have other opinions that are going to play an important role in this overall thinking around the success of the chatbot, it's important to bring them in early and make sure everyone aligns. Okay. Is the goal that we've come up with, is it specific and measurable? If we really want to be able to measure success, we need to make sure that that's possible. There are many times where we'll have a program or some other initiative, and we have maybe a general sense of what we want to achieve. So, we know our turnover for new hires, for instance, is higher than we want. But can we be more specific? Can we get actual data on that? That might be difficult, but I think it's a very valuable goal to be as specific and measurable as possible. And then the final bullet point to think through here, is the goal tied to an actual business objective? I think that's important, not only to get not only buy-in from stakeholders, but also proactive support from stakeholders, business leaders, influencers within your organization. So I think that element helps those folks to become a champion for the goal of the chatbot, and not just, okay, we're really going to sign off on that, but really invested in it. So, big bolded tip here. If you can tie your sort of desired result to an existing KPI, a key performance indicator here, then that's a much, I think, clearer pathway to success, because you have a hard and fast existing indicator that you can be aiming for. It's a lot easier, I think, to articulate the goal and your plan to achieve that goal if you have something clear like that you can, tie your results to. So a couple of thoughts right from the get-go. I would, like to kind of throw this out for the whole group here. So keep this in mind, and I'd love to hear in chat if anyone's, willing to share as we're, talking through the following steps. What objectives are you coming to this discussion with, or what problems are you looking to solve currently? So hopefully our discussion here is going to kind of, get your gears turning as far as how you could approach those problems or how you might be able to reach those objectives. But yeah, just we love to hear, what are your current kind of challenges or problems you're trying to solve, and then we can try to speak to those. So we'll maybe pause here for just 5 or 10 seconds and let folks think, and if you'd like to chime in, we'd love to hear from you. And then we'll dive in here momentarily to talking about sort of a process for thinking about that ROI calculation, as it were. Okay. Keep thinking. We'll charge ahead here, and Corey, I'll rely on you. Jump in anytime and
yes, actually, Dimitri did say in the Q&A that he's keen to gain any sort of metrics that measure user satisfaction.
Okay. Yeah. We'll, towards the second half of our discussion today, we'll talk about a bunch of different metrics that chatbots can gather, and a really solid one of those is going to be gathering actual user satisfaction over the course of a chatbot experience. So that's a really common element we like to recommend including, and we'll talk about the ways that you can structure questions to gather that info so we can then see those metrics.
Awesome. And then really quickly,
Sure.
Michael is running a 10-week blended course with webinars and online content, but after the start, engagement is dropping off. So yeah, they'd like higher completion and less drop off.
Okay. Yeah, I think a very common use case, all things considered, when you really boil that down, trying to sustain engagement over time. And given that you have some sort of digital enrollment, I'm assuming, with webinars and other online content, you probably have some hard numbers about what what signups look like or what actual attendance looks like. And so it might give you some actual hard data you could aim for, more like a specific sort of goal. Hey, we're getting, this many 100 people sign up, but by week 10 we've got 60 people still attending, right? So let's try to aim for 70 or 80, right? Like some sort of specific and measurable goal. So, and then that's something that's very easy to look at the metrics of the chatbot and see, okay, how close are we coming to our goal? Where do we need to continue making more efforts? As opposed to just looking for, right, some sort of uplift in those numbers. more general and maybe harder to kind of so clearly see like real resounding success when things are a little bit more vague. So yeah, as we go through, I think we'll talk through a bunch of strategies to kind of gather that data and whatnot. So let's dive in here to talking about kind of a formula. Let me move some of my Zoom controls here. Okay. So thinking through a bit of a formula here, you can see there's kind of 4 stages that we can go through, moving towards having this business case where we can not only have a quick pitch, but also just like a full version we can talk through with stakeholders. So here's kind of the basic framework to think about. And we've already talked a little bit about defining a specific metric, right? That you're looking for a goal that's as specific as possible. Just to kind of reinforce it up front, we want to define that success up front as much as possible so we'll know it when we see it, right? Any ROI plan that is going to require data, or sorry, any ROI plan will require data or inputs to measure results. So you're going to need to identify your data collection plan in advance. And then every organization is going to account for program costs a bit differently, but this is kind of an obvious step in the calculation. So what is the cost of the program actually going to be? And you can kind of think about this step like, how much am I going to need to spend to buy my success metric? And then lastly, we're driving towards creating that business case to communicate this formula to all the stakeholders involved. Sometimes this can be informal, but often it's formal. Either way, it's a vital part of success in the pitch, not even getting to the success of the chatbot. So it's our recommendation, think up and be able to articulate an elevator pitch along with the more sort of full detailed version. And we're going to talk through a couple of examples here, walking through this formula moving forward. So let's dive in to the beginning here. So let's consider like a new employee onboarding example. And in this case, this organization has a turnover problem. The problem one of the examples I kind of alluded to earlier. And especially in the first 12 months of a new hire's employment, that's where turnover tends to be highest. And so a goal for this new employee onboarding chatbot that we're creating to address this problem would be to reduce that early employee turnover by 8%. Depending on what all of the numbers are, this is just an example. This number might be higher or lower depending on any specific case, but let's go with we're reducing early employee turnover by 8%. So that's kind of the success metric that we're going to aim for. Okay. Moving into that next step. So the data collection plan can be pretty straightforward in this case. So if our HRS system captures new hire data plus the data point of when an early employee leaves, then we should be able to access the actual sort of raw data for when people are hired and when people leave. This is important so that we can, backing up here slightly, if we have this very specific metric we're aiming for, being able to actually get access to that data is an important piece here. And this can often be one of the top challenges, is getting access to the data that we need. Sometimes we just have to do the best we can in trying to figure out these elements. Okay, so next step is going to be, here's how much, based on the cost to build and manage the chatbot, here's how much this new employee onboarding chatbot is going to cost per new hire, based on how many new hires you have over a period of time. And then finally, you can kind of put together this business case. So each early lost employee costs the organization X amount of dollars. and our NEO chatbot's going to reduce turnover by this percentage, and thus our overall savings are going to be this many dollars. This kind of concrete calculation and presentation can really, I think, get buy-in to the overall chatbot use case. So if you are thinking through, okay, here's my problem, right? As we go through this example, think about your own business case, your own business problem. And I think that this solution can help. Hopefully these steps can kind of give you a little visual for the sort of process you can go through to draft up at least a simple business case to start making that case internally for implementing a solution here. So any questions along the way, Corey?
We have another idea by Alan. So I think we have some good ideas that maybe at the end we can maybe brainstorm using the ROI that you're showing.
Perfect. Okay. I'm just taking a quick peek at it too. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, let's as we move forward and kind of talk through actual metrics that we can measure with the chatbot, think about the different elements that you mentioned there, Alan, and we'll probably see a variety of different metrics that could apply to each of those different elements. Hopefully I'll give you kind of an idea for ways you could gather data using those different elements. Okay, so I'm gonna pop open a bunch of different strategies here that we can think about and talk through. So in taking that our business case and translating that to building the chatbot towards achieving that goal, driving towards achieving that metric, there are a lot of different strategies that chatbot can employ. So the chatbot can use reminders over time to continue to inform and remind folks of important information, especially in the wake of a training or a workshop or something like that. Presenting questions can be really multifaceted, so lots of different ways to ask questions. Multiple choice questions are easy for users to answer. True and false can be really simple, but also really easy to answer, and can be good for sort of quick knowledge checks. Open-ended questions are really powerful because they get users to think. They can encourage a little bit more. It's really easy to type the letter A to a multiple choice question and there, I've engaged with the question. An open-ended question asks more of users, right? So we might see a lower response rate compared to some other easy to answer questions, but we tend to see more thoughtful answers as well. And so we find that a useful trade-off. Open-ended questions can be lots of different actual questions, right? They can be asking users about applying a principle and what their experience has been like. Really great for gathering some qualitative feedback. You can ask users to give feedback about a program, right? Get qualitative feedback about the actual training they went through. Asking users what their experience has been like with the chatbot. So to that earlier question, was that Michael maybe, who it was Dimitri. So measuring user satisfaction, right? I think a really great simple formula for measuring user satisfaction, since we're here, we'll just dive into that. Really like something like a net promoter score sort of question. Hey, on a scale of 0 to 10, how likely are you to recommend this experience to a friend or a colleague? And then we can get an actual numeric score, get some quantitative feedback with that. And then as a follow-up question after they've answered that, we can then pose an open-ended question. And that could be something simple like, thanks for your feedback. What comments or feedback do you have about the experience? Just be really open and broad. We can get even more fancy, and based on the score a user gave, let's say maybe we bundle 0 to 5. If they said somewhere 0 to 5, then we have a question that's like, hey, appreciate your honesty in sharing that. What could I, the chatbot, do to better serve you, or what could I have done that that would have been better for you? Maybe in the middle range, the chatbot presents the question a little bit differently, like, I appreciate your feedback. What's something that would improve the experience? And folks who rate it really highly, we could ask a totally separate question, like, what principle or what interaction or what did you like most about the chatbot? What worked best for you? So folks who engage differently, or sorry, folks who rated their experience differently can see different questions, right? We can do a little bit of branching from the initial question. And that can give us interesting different data sets, right? A more open feedback question, just like what feedback do you have? That could give us a wide variety of answers, but then we would need to kind of parse through ourselves and decide, okay, here's someone who, rated the chatbot sort of lower feedback. Here's higher feedback, right? It can be really handy to have separate questions that we know, hey, this is someone responding to a low rating. This is someone responding to a high rating. So anyway, that's to kind of dive down into the design of that sort of feedback question there. Links to content is a really, really useful bit of functionality that chatbot can provide. And using some built-in functionality on a platform, we can actually track link clicks. Well, we'll actually check out a little sample report about that. FAQs and other sort of knowledge-based content, something the chatbot can provide as well. Our customer showcases today offered some excellent examples of that. So a lot of different strategies we can employ here, and we'll see how a bunch of these plug into specific metrics that these things gather here in just a slide or two. Here are a couple of example messages as you're thinking through how would we actually write chatbot content to gather this sort of data. So here's an example of like a 1 to 5 scale. Give us some numerical answers here. An example of a multiple choice question, and then more of an open-ended question here. These are actually all from one specific chatbot, our training reinforcement demo, and we'll look at some reports from this chatbot so we can see some user engagement with these different questions. So 2 different kinds of questions here, and an open of a sort of essentially multiple choice, right? Rating scale, multiple choice, and open-ended. To back up just for a moment, one note to make is that, and this is just kind of a personal anecdote or observation after 7 years of chatbot design. We've got a number of I'll not click on the slide as I try to highlight things. We've got a number of kind of interactive elements on this slide, right? Different types of questions. We can also, in a slightly different way, track like link engagement, knowledge-based type stuff. But the reminders piece, I think it's often very tempting to say, hey, I've got this big list or big bucket of content that's really important to share. And so let's write some touch points, a couple of times a week, we're going to send a reminder about this. And let's also share this really important nugget about this principle. And reminders are, by their very nature, not really supposed to be interactive, right? We just push some content to the user. And so if we're really focused on getting some metrics about user engagement and responsiveness and things like that, we need to focus on building engagement options into a chatbot. So we've just often seen through many years, we might start with a big list of chatbot interactions that are a lot of reminders, and sending reminders to folks that don't invite engagement means that we'll have fewer metrics to rely on. So it's just kind of an important umbrella concept to keep in mind is if we want to see user engagement data, we need to make sure the chatbot design engages users and really elicits interaction from them. So might seem kind of obvious on its face, but I think once we get down into the weeds of chatbot design, it's easy to lose track of. And so important to kind of keep that vision of the forest for the trees. So anyway, let's jump down and start talking about some metrics that we can gather. So subscription rates, right? You've got a user population of, to use an example, maybe Michael's example from the chat. So running this 10-week blended course. So got some webinars, some online content. Maybe there's also some in-person stuff related to that as well. You've got a certain user population, and ostensibly you'll know the size of that population, right? Let's say it's 100 people. And if you get 60 people to sign up for the chatbot, I'm keeping the numbers simple, so it's easy for us to do that math in our head. You can see what the subscription rates are going to be there. If you're talking more in line with your whole organization, 5,000, 10,000 more people, or maybe you're much smaller, in that 100 range. If you are offering a chatbot to everyone, still ostensibly be able to kind of gauge that population. And then you can look at the sign up numbers on the chatbot and figure out what those subscription rates are. So that's a metric that involves some kind of pre-chatbot elements, right? So we've talked in a couple of our sessions so far about getting that invite right, like getting users to join the chatbot. So that requires a little bit of sort of pre-chatbot engagement, whether that's facilitators or making the right kind of adverts to encourage folks to sign up. Opt-out rates, now we're sort of fully into the chatbot metrics here, right? So folks who do sign up, how many end up opting out? How many decide to leave the chatbot over the course of its runtime? Response rates, how often folks respond to a question. Well, we can look at overall data here. If we want to drill down to specific users, we can also look at, this user responded X% of the time or to X% of the questions. Response times as well. This is something that's more of a kind of a high level. We can take a peek at the dashboard that admins on our platform have to take a look at that. Link click-throughs, right? Like I mentioned, video views, knowledge-based inquiries, support tickets. So these are all elements that we can look at metrics-wise to give us a sense for the chatbot achieving that business target. Now, if we, I hesitate to zoom us all the way back to the beginning, so let's recall, if we have a goal, thinking about this new employee onboarding chatbot, to reduce turnover by 8%, that's kind of our business goal, our business use case, and the chatbot metrics should address that overall goal. But you'll notice that overall goal is something you'll need to measure kind of outside the chatbot, right? That's the business result. And so the metrics from the chatbot here don't necessarily guarantee success or failure of the program. You might have a certain number of folks sign up to the chatbot and love it and get a lot of value out of it. But if it's not addressing that business use case, then it sounds like the chatbot design needs to be tweaked, needs to be improved. Similarly, we might find that maybe your response rates aren't as high as you would sort of in your gut like, but if the chatbot then meets sort of the business goal, then that chatbot metric isn't stopping the success of the overall project, right? So there's, it's important to consider both those things kind of in the context together and use them as a guide for iterating and improving. If you're in the last session, Corey was talking about performance support chatbot, or any of our sessions the past couple of days where we've talked about that cycle of designing a chatbot, creating it, building it on our platform, and looking at data and iterating, kind of going in the cycle, using the business case and chatbot metrics to inform that workflow is crucial. So let's see. Oh, also, yeah, qualitative feedback. Those sort of feedback questions that up to this point we've kind of talked about and thought about as though they're like something you'd ask at the end of a chatbot. But a little insider pro tip here is nothing stops us from building those in over the course of the chatbot, right? End of week 1, how's it going so far? You know, you're a month in. This is a 90-day program, 30 days in. How's the chatbot experience going for you? How's the amount of messaging? Is it too much, too little, just right? Those kind of Goldilocks questions can be quick to answer, simple, keep it short and sweet, plug in, and gather some data along the way that lets us not spend 90 days on a chatbot experience, and then at the end of it look at the data and say, if only we had known earlier, we might have changed some things. So keep that in mind too, is that the timing of gathering metrics, the earlier we can start gathering, the better. So at this point, this is kind of our cue where we're going to jump over and take a look at a couple of reports here. So we've got just a little screenshot here of our reporting dashboard. We're going to jump over and actually take a look at that here. So let me try to jump over and log in here. Okay. So here we are on our training reinforcement demo. And this is a version we have connected with Microsoft Teams and Slack and other messaging apps. And this is the chatbot build itself. And built into every chatbot is going to be this reports tab. And so clicking over there is going to bring us to the report interface here. Give us, like we saw on that slide, a little preview, a dashboard of our monthly statistics. So we can see, and let me actually zoom in here just a little bit, give you there we go. So we've got a couple of really high level statistics you can see right off the bat here. So new user signups per month, the total ongoing active users, people who are still subscribed to the chatbot. We can see opt-outs, and then the total users all time across this chatbot. This is also where you can pull a lot of specific report types. So we talked about a bunch of different metrics in our slide, and this is where there are a lot of different report types to address those. So let's see. Two of the most popular reports are going to be the script report, a really simple output that shows messages, messages sent, and any responses to messages. I really like this response report. Our sort of new version 2, gives us a wealth of response or engagement data. We'll take a look at an example of one of those. We've sort of touched on a links report here a little bit. I've got one of those pulled up as well that we can take a look at. Knowledge base report lets us look at data about usage of the knowledge base, and a bunch of bot exceptions report lets us look at user errors, see if there are issues cropping up in the chatbot we should address. So there's a big range of reports we can take a look at here and pull to then be able to analyze all that data. And I've got 2 pulled up here that we can dive into in more detail.
Sterling, as you go over those, there are a couple of questions in the Q&A from Dimitri.
Great.
With specific. If you could just read those and maybe hit on those as you pick and choose what you're going to show.
Let's see, Dimitri.
In the Q&A, not the chat, but the Q&A.
Sure. Yeah. Let's see. So yeah, so there are this dashboard right here, and actually the admin dashboard as well gives you a few metrics. So the Dimitri, you're mentioning average conversation length per user and average number of messages per conversation. So those are, so like average number of messages per conversation. When I look at both of these both sound more like thinking about chatbot interaction, maybe more in terms of that bucket of kind of like a customer service or maybe even performance support use case where a user might be chatting back and forth with a chatbot, querying information a number of times. And so if we're in that bucket, so there's that. If we're thinking about like a programmatic chatbot sending messaging over time, the average number of messages per conversation is something that we're basically programming in, right? Hey, today is going to be a question, the user responds and they get, one message as an answer. So in that kind of programmatic case, there are not as many of these, like the average number of messages, that's a pretty hard number. That's whatever we program in. Same with average conversation length. So then moving us back over to the other chatbot sort of overarching bucket of like a more transactional or customer service kind of oriented chatbot. Thinking about those two metrics, yeah, average number of messages per conversation or conversation length. That is a little, yeah, those are really good questions. I could imagine ways to pull that from the different reports that we can look at here, but that's something more for us to dig into. So I think that's probably something that would be better for us to, I think it's just more in depth than we can tackle right here. So the answer is yes, but involves diving into the weeds a lot more here.
Can I chime in real quick?
Sure.
I think what's the challenge about those words, like this is Vince, by the way, everyone. Average conversation length for chatbots, you might define a conversation differently than someone else. And so I think that's some of the, so there's not like a generic report on the mobile coach platform that just pulls that. There is the data in there for you to pull that, depending on how you define a conversation. So for example, if someone says, well, a conversation's from the time that a user enrolls in the chatbot to the time that they opt out, which could be a day, it could be 12 months. Someone else might say, well, the average, we're actually looking for the average interaction length. And so how do you define an interaction? The minute someone, is it just an exchange of messages, and then after that exchange of messages is done, that's your conversation. And so because that can differ from chatbot designer to chatbot designer, we give you the raw data and kind of leave it up to you to compute those averages. So I just wanted to chime in with that.
Yeah, that's a really great point. So that factor comes into play in a number of different metrics. So the data that, to Vince's point, the data that we'll take a look at here gives us a lot of kind of raw data that we may decide to synthesize to display the metrics that we're looking for. So that kind of reminds me of a conversation about reporting with one client that I had about, do we consider certain keywords to be part of the data set or not, and why are they included in report types? And in the end, the answer is just like Vince said, it's the platform is very flexible and open-ended. So we give you all of the data and you can decide what makes sense to include based on your definitions of what you want to include in that data. So with that said, let's jump in and take a look at a couple of these reports. So I've pulled a response report and a links report for us to take a look at. On the platform, you can actually preview those reports. That'll just pop open a separate tab with that report. But it's, like many cases, when you download the report, open it in Excel or Google Sheets, that's when you can start getting fancy with stuff. So let's take a look at our response report that I pulled here, and I'll zoom in a little bit. I know I'm a sort of 75%er when it comes to Google here. Zoom way out, hence my thick lenses. So here we've got the output for a response report, and I've kind of gone in and just done a little highlighting just to kind of segment things to make it easier for us to look at. So here's a top level output about overall kind of engagement numbers. We'll dive into those in just a moment. Then we've got a listing of the different questions and whatnot in the chatbot. And then we've got users in all of these rows. And forgive me for inducing any motion sickness, but just kind of want to scroll down, give you a quick view of that. Lots and lots of different users and a bunch of different columns here with some important data. So we've got a couple of questions included in this script, and we're able to calculate individual engagement rates here. So we can see how many individual responses, individual response rates. And there are a couple of different custom fields that, pieces of user data that users set while they're engaging with this chatbot. So we can actually include those. And let me zoom way down. You can see a couple of entries to those fields as we go on down. So you can include data like that here as well. It's just kind of a handy way to look at different user info. And then throughout, let me zoom us down. It's sorted from lowest individual response rate to highest. So we always start out with not as much engagement at the top, and as we zoom down, we'll see lots of answers from folks throughout this chatbot. Again, this is a pretty brief demo, so there's not too many questions to analyze here, but you can see each individual person. Oh, look at this character right here. That's me. You can see each person's individual answers. Now, if this is data that we need to keep anonymized, you as the admin could come in and remove names if desired. Just look at individual users if you'd like, but this report is going to give us, in all the aggregate data, these cool overall stats. So an overall response rate to the questions in the chatbot. At the very bottom, again, sorry, so forgive me for a little bit of zooming here, but you can see those overall numbers. So all messages, or in this case, all questions sent, number of responses to those questions, individual response rates to different questions. And those numbers all get totaled up here at the end to provide those overall statistics. So zooming us back up to the top, we do some breakdowns here with people who engage more than half the time, people who engage less than half the time, people who don't engage at all. You can see opt-out numbers here. So a lot of different metrics contained in one report here. This is also where you could look at, here's the total users who have subscribed to the chatbot. This you could compare to your population that you're trying to encourage to join. Get some sign-up rates or your conversion rate from there. So this report I think is really powerful, gives a lot of data. This is where you might drill into a lot of questions and say, hey, let's look at the performance of, the questions that we put in week 2. You could find just like the week 2 questions. Let's pretend it's these. And you could zoom on down and look at, okay, so here's our engagement with these questions. How are we satisfied with that? Let's look at all of the individual user answers and see what the data looks like for those specific instances. So a way to drill into a lot of the specific data from this kind of much larger report. So that's taking a quick look at the response report. Again, along the way, feel free, please, to chime in with questions in the chat. The other report I wanted to make mention of here is a links report from this training reinforcement demo. So there's a web page that we generate with a lot of user responses on it, kind of a cool bit of functionality like, hey, what's an idea you have for training reinforcement? and then we populate all those user answers on a web template that everyone can access and see a lot of brainstorming about training reinforcement. And here's a report showing the people who access that link we shared. So you can see this sort of the master link here. And then again, all the individual people and their personal access of that link. Some folks, a lot of folks actually accessing it 2 or more times. And then the overall access throughout. You can compare this number against, the overall user population. You can see there are a bunch of folks in here who received that link but never accessed it. So there might need to be, we can easily total up what we've got here and decide, hey, maybe we should offer another round of encouragement. Maybe the chatbot should remind folks that they have access to this resource to try to get some of these folks to check out that resource. So here's just another example of the types of reports and data that we can pull from the platform here. Jumping back over, there's some other functionality built into the report interface here that lets you automate reports so that you can, without needing to come in and pull a new report each time, you can set up a data set and then have it auto-generate daily, weekly, monthly, whatever cadence is best for your organization. And especially once you've kind of figured out in the raw data, here are the metrics that are most important for us that we really want to focus on. Being able to just generate that report over and over again is really handy, we found. So let's jump back over to our slides as we're kind of wrapping up here. Wanted to share some high-level benchmarking info with you just to let's see. Oh yeah, Corey, thanks for in my peripheral just checking here. Yeah, Michael and Alan, if there are, let's take a minute and kind of speak to these really quick here. So again, as a reminder, or for anybody watching after the fact, Michael mentioned this 10-week blended course with webinars, online content, but people kind of gradually drop off over time. Ongoing tasks every couple of weeks, but not everybody completes them. So to kind of achieve a higher completion and less drop off, let's actually back up here too a little bit. Let's go back to our metrics and let's just go back to strategies here. So in gathering that data, I think a good example, ongoing tasks, right? I think having some follow-up questions, checking in with folks about completion, and doing so, there are good ways that we can sort of structure questions like that. Like, have you had a chance to do this? A yes, no question can elicit maybe no response from folks who haven't done it yet. But if we style it like, have you been able to do this? Yes or not yet. Super simple tweak like that, we found can increase engagement with that question. Not yet indicates, oh, I haven't gotten to it yet, but I will. So even making little tweaks like that can make a big difference. Check-ins, if people are facing roadblocks, can the chatbot, ask them about that and suggest scheduling specific times, help users schedule time to complete those activities. Even providing just the nudge and the reinforcement, oh yes, I need to do that, can also play a big part in increasing completion of those activities. If they need to go somewhere to complete those activities, like linking, I keep trying to click on the slides. If they need to go somewhere to complete those activities, linking to that content or to that page, right? Super simple. Oh yeah, I need to do that. Click the link, go and be able to do it. Let's see. Alan had mentioned, so improve learning the flow of work techniques with training reinforcement for new product training, new hire onboarding training, a lot of complex processes. Yeah, that's more and more the case these days, huh? Also promoting new course content, games, and playlists within our LMS. Yeah, huge range of possibilities there, right? So a lot of similar elements could work there too, right? Simple reminders in the chatbot, right, can help just drive more retention of that knowledge. But links straight to those various elements, right? Even like building in almost like an FAQ or like a knowledge base option, right? If folks wanted to get easy access to different elements, just be like, to use a phrase that Vince mentioned in previous sessions today, how do I XYZ? And I guess it mentioned originally by our customer showcase earlier today. How do I get to the game section in the LMS? If that's a little bit tricky for folks, let them just ask the chatbot, and the chatbot can then say, oh, boom, here's a link, take you right to it in the LMS. Let's see. Yeah, providing like job aids or resources for complex processes. One thing that, hey, here's a simple thing I think is really awesome: sending graphics or PDFs with instructions, something that users can hold on to, reference again if they need to, and gives people a little visual for, oh, it's this button over here that then leads me to this thing, right? I think that's a really neat thing that a chatbot can easily send to folks. Yeah, hopefully a lot of the other kind of metrics that we talked through here, that we can see how these are all going to kind of play a role in those things as well, right? How many people are signing up? How many people stay subscribed over time? What are response rates looking like to the questions that we're providing? So yeah, hopefully that provides some food for thought, I think, in those realms. Let's see. Oh,
Thank you.
Sure.
I just was going to say thank you so much. I think it's a lot easier sometimes to understand these pieces when you're relating it to a real use case, whether,
Right.
you know, Michael and Alan, we got to relate them to yours, but I hope everyone else, that's helpful to think through and say like, okay, let's take this out of concept and put it into practice.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for providing the sort of hard real world use cases, both of you. And I kind of backed up to this slide because one thing I'd point out here is this qualitative feedback piece here, or really even any feedback. I think especially as we're trying to, again, let me just scroll up those use cases, right? Like, you know, Michael, you've got this 10-week program, and maybe there's some feedback that users have about that experience over those 10 weeks or the drop off that maybe we haven't gathered yet, or something that's kind of hidden there that might come out through maybe a slightly more anonymized feeling qualitative feedback in a chatbot. Similarly with the or, you know, another thought there, again, sorry, I'm getting in the weeds here, but I think this is interesting. Maybe you'd see that the folks who, maybe you'd see feedback from folks who are sticking with it that's still really valuable, and that might impact or color like, okay, well, the impact we're having with folks who do complete everything is XYZ, and that's really valuable, you know, so we want to recognize that. And then kind of in Alan's case here, with all those various pieces there, I think including that feedback element, making sure that we're keeping the user experience in mind and how we're providing, if we're providing the right resources to users, is really important, right? We can put our best guess out there, right? And that's often a very good guess. But once our chatbot is in the wild and has actual users engaging with it, then we can get some really valuable feedback about if it's meeting their needs, which oftentimes can line up with that business case that we're trying to achieve. So let's jump back down. I know we have just a couple minutes left here. A really quick summary here of the benchmarks, just to give you an idea. I think a main point I would emphasize here is you'll notice different use cases here. Hey, here's training reinforcement, kind of like what we've just been looking at. So across different use cases, numbers are going to vary. And we're not necessarily aiming to achieve 100%, right? We're not aiming for 100% response rate. Perfection is not very realistic. So let's not stress necessarily about, these are averages, right? Some will be much higher, some will be much lower. But I think this helps contextualize that the audience and the type of chatbot and the use case, all of that context matters and is going to impact these different numbers. And so as you're thinking about statistics and data for your chatbot, keep in mind that your use case is going to be totally unique to you. And these can give us some sort of a good benchmark, a good guideline to follow, or to maybe aim for. But keep that context in mind, that different use cases are all going to have their own unique elements to tackle. So with that said, we'll kind of close things out here. Love to tackle any other questions that anyone might have. Corey, is there anything else in the Q&A? Or
No, I think everyone's just saying you're doing a great job. So
well,
no questions.
Well, thank you.
I will say, if anyone is thinking about like metrics or ideas or something they didn't have a chance to share here, if you leave it as a comment to this video, or if you're watching the recording and have those ideas, Sterling will get a notification so we can chat there. Or you should at least have my email, because I've been emailing everyone, or Vince's. But I'll share some info on that page as well if you want to chat more about metrics or anything, since we're running out of time.
And I will maybe just real quick, Corey, while I do this, if you want to find the schedule, I just wanted to mention, sort of in my session on Monday, plugged our help center, and this will be available, I think, as part of kind of the overall resources shared in the wake of the conference with everyone. We've got a specific section here about reporting, so that's going to give kind of a walkthrough of different report types. There's information about lots of different major reports here, as well as links to some sample reports that you can take a look at, ways to pull reports. So this is a very detailed walkthrough of how to pull reports from our platform. So a lot of great details, step by step, lots of images. So just wanted to plug that. That's a good resource as well if you're looking for more info about using our specific reporting unit.
Sterling, would you mind just popping that link into the chat for everyone?
Oh, sure. Here is.
Yes, and I will include that. So on this session page, I will include that as a resource on the page as well. So if anyone doesn't have a chance to catch it now, you can find it there.
Oh, and I know I just stopped my screen share, but here is the schedule on our site, so you can go check out the upcoming events. I know tomorrow we've got kind of closing out with the presentation of the group project and Vince's keynote, and the final client showcase tomorrow. And coming up right now is the final sort of group session, right, Corey?
Yes, we're having our very last one. And then tomorrow, everyone in the keynote, we are going to try out the chatbot we've been building as a group. So I am very excited for everyone to see that.
Very cool. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining, and I really appreciate your comments and engagement today. So we'll wish you the best for this Wednesday.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.